Throughout social media, street racing has long been idolized in today's culture, with series like Wangan Midnight, Initial D, along with the Fast and Furious franchise proving to be incredibly popular. You may have also heard of these so-called legendary clubs like the Kanjizoku tribe, RE Amamiya, and one of the most well-known clubs, Midnight, the club that became the inspiration for the Wangan Midnight manga, anime, and arcade games. Nowadays, most of us probably know Midnight as the secret, super exclusive club of gentlemen racers who would regularly drive around Tokyo's Shotoku Expressway at speeds of over 300 kilometers an hour. In this video, we'll be going over the history and the untold truths about Midnight, along with the founder, a man named Eiichi Yoshida. Let's get on with the video. Before forming Midnight, Eiichi Yoshida was part of another club in the late 70s and early 80s known as the American Car Club, or ACC for short. The head of the ACC was a man named Koichi Okawa, who drove a Pontiac Firebird Trans Am tuned to about 500 horsepower. He later took the car to the famous Yatabe test track where many racers alike competed to get the highest recorded top speed. Okawa's Trans Am went on to set a record-breaking top speed of 264 kilometers an hour, putting him right into the crosshairs of other racers and tuning shops alike. Yoshida had a lot of respect for Okawa as they shared similar passions and goals, and after a couple of years being in the ACC, Yoshida left and eventually crossed paths with three other racers named Masayuki Kato, Terazawa, and Toshihiko Yamada. The group of four would regularly race together on the Wangan before eventually deciding to form their own group, and hence, Midnight was born. Many articles will say that Midnight was formed in 1987. However, the official Midnight website on the Wayback Machine notes that it was established in April of 1982. Anyways, during Midnight's early days, many of its members were very young, rumored to be between the early to late 20s. However, the requirements to join the club meant that these members were incredibly successful and wealthy. One of the requirements for joining the club is that your car had to be capable of going at speeds of over 260 kilometers an hour for up to 15 minutes at a time, meaning that not only did your car have to be fast, but it also had to be reliable and very well built. More on that later. When you first apply to join Midnight, you are first tested by a member of the club who would closely examine your skills and confidence when driving at high speeds for an extended period of time. If you were nervous or drove in an unsafe manner, you practically had zero chance of getting accepted. If you were part of the lucky few who did, you would then become an apprentice and be given the pink Midnight sticker. At this stage, you have to regularly attend the meetings at a Royal Host restaurant, or later, at Yoshida's own shop, named Midnight Porsche Works. At the end of your testing period, the current members of the club all have to unanimously accept you. Mind you, this testing period has been known to last up to 5 years, so the acceptance rate was incredibly low, and being accepted meant that you were part of the lucky handful. Once accepted, you're given the prestigious silver Midnight sticker by none other than Yoshida himself. It is rumored that only about 10% of apprentices would ever eventually go on to be accepted into the club and receive the silver sticker. Throughout the club's existence, they kept around 30 members on average, and the most they were ever known to have concurrently was around 75. During the club's earlier years, the recruitment process was a lot easier and faster, but as the group grew ever more popular, more people wanted to join, sometimes just to get that famous silver sticker. It got to the point where people started putting fake stickers on their cars, and as a result of this issue, Yoshida had to trademark the logo and name in order to prevent fakes. On top of that, he also began tightening up the requirements to join the club, and this included that insane minimum speed of 260 kilometers an hour. However, it should be noted that although this is the minimum requirement, members would regularly sustain speeds of over 300 kilometers an hour during races, some even claiming speeds upwards of 330, all the way back in the 80s and 90s. Once accepted, members maintained a very strict rule set. For example, members would only operate by a first-name basis and never disclose each other's professions. maintaining a basic level of anonymity among the members. To this date, only 2 members of the original Midnight crew have ever disclosed their profession. In an interview for the magazine Max Power, it was revealed that a driver of an FD Mazda RX-7 was actually a well-known property developer, whereas the driver of an R32 GTR ran a family-owned car sales business. It is commonly believed that most of the early members of the club owned or founded many of today's long-standing Japanese tuning shops like Tome, Greddy, Apflug, Spoon, and etc. However, it is unknown whether this is actually true. Another well-known rumor about the club is that meetups were often announced through secret messages, usually in the form of weird advertisements on newspaper articles. An example would say, quote, "For sale, small handbags at discount prices. For more information, I'm available to meet up at Daikoku parking area on Thursday between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Thank you." End quote. To most people, they may find the meeting time a bit odd, but those who understand will head right over. Given the extreme requirements asked of Midnight members to be in the club, the cars had to be really well built, as was previously mentioned. This led to the birth of a few crazy Wangan monsters. The club would regularly consist of cars like the Porsche 911 Turbo, Toyota Supra, Nissan Fairlady Z, 300ZX and Skyline GTRs, Mazda RX-7s, and more. However, there is one car that stands out from the rest, one that many would consider to be the poster child of Midnight. That car, of course, is Yoshida's own 930 911 Turbo. And for obvious reasons, it was one of, if not the fastest cars and likely was the most expensive to build. Known as the Yoshida Specialist 930, it was estimated that over $2 million were put into the car, an amount that doesn't sound too far-fetched considering the car was supposedly capable of maintaining 350 km/h reliably for long periods of time all the way back in the 1990s. Part of this insane cost was the fact that he actually got Porsche to agree help build the car with custom parts. This included stuff like twin spark ignition, Mahle forged pistons, along with titanium connecting rods, a K33S turbo, brakes, and other components straight from Porsche's Le Mans race cars. This led to the car reportedly making between 600 and 700 horsepower. This is the exact car that became the inspiration for Tatsuya Shima's Blackbird in the Wangan Midnight arcade and manga series. Hunter's Moon made a really good video detailing the story of said 911 and was partly the inspiration behind me making this video. A link to his video will be in the description. Unfortunately, as a lot of things go, especially given the high risks associated with street racing, Midnight eventually got into trouble. At about 3 a.m. on a 1999 Friday night, members of the Bozuzoku biker gang were messing around and scaring drivers on the Wangan Highway, and by pure luck, or rather misfortune, a couple of Midnight members happened to be racing there. The bikers forced the members into a high traffic area and caused a chain reaction crash where 2 of the biker gang members died along with 6 innocent civilians getting injured. Although the outcome may not seem too bad given how extreme the accident sounds, one gentleman's policy of the club was that if anyone were to ever be hurt by their actions, they were to immediately disband, and that's what they did. This strict moral code was partly what made the club so notorious. They knew that street racing was dangerous and always tried to keep innocent bystanders away from said risk. And with that, Midnight unfortunately vanished into the history books. Or did they? In recent years, Midnight has actually came back, but it didn't really start off with good news. This is because Eiichi Yoshida, the original founder of Midnight, is currently in jail on multiple counts of fraud. In 2018, he told a client that he'd be able to use his connections to get him a spot for a Porsche 918 Spider. The client paid Yoshida a hefty sum, who then ran away with the money. The very next year, he told a client that he'd be able to get him a spot for a LaFerrari. He supposedly collected over $2 million from said client and ran away. He later admitted that he needed this money to pay off debts from poor financial decisions. Following his arrest, his shop Midnight Porsche Works would be shut down, later becoming a Volvo dealership. Later on in 2019, after a near 20-year hiatus, Midnight fully came back. Unfortunately, Eiichi is obviously no longer the chairman of Midnight, and was instead replaced by a man named Tadao Tamura. It is commonly believed that Tadao was the original builder and current owner of a well-known dark blue FD RX-7 as seen in this picture here. With this resurgence of Midnight in the modern era, their focus has shifted from street racing to racing at various professional events. In fact, they even stated that the team will never return to street racing on public roads ever again. Of course, the members are now much older, have families to take care of, and have to be much more responsible in general. There actually now exists a Midnight website page you can actually go to and see a couple cool photos, a list of old records at Yatabe, and more recently at Tsukuba and the Fuji Speedway. At the bottom of the page we can find what appears to be an official Instagram page, although it is hard to confirm whether this is the real deal. Of course, now that they are in the modern era, their fleet of cars is ever more impressive, including but not limited to cars like the R35 GTR, Porsche GT2 and GT3 RS, Lamborghini Countach, Mercedes AMG C63 and AMG GT, and a bunch of other modern supercars. Going through their Instagram, it does appear to be a legit official account, as many photos posted aren't found anywhere else. It also appears to be fairly active, with the most recent post at the time of writing this video being January 14th, 2023. And that's kind of where the story of Midnight is today. Unfortunately, not much is known about the whereabouts of the legendary Yoshida Specials 930, as it was last seen at Yoshida's shop before it was closed down following his arrest. Luckily, Speed Hunter's photographer Dino was able to track it down at the shop before its disappearance, and it appeared to be in immaculate condition, with the dealer even saying that it was in perfect running condition too. Going back to the introduction at the start of the video, it's rather funny that this is what gets romanticized, especially in the Western world, especially when such activities are kind of frowned upon in the very disciplined nation of Japan. To many citizens, Yoshida's arrest was karma biting him back in the butt after endangering so many other commuters during his street racing days. Regardless, we should be glad that Midnight is finally back and embracing, to an extent, their history and fame in today's culture in a more safe manner. But we should also be preserving and carrying on Midnight's legacy and history, as there will undoubtedly never be another team like them ever.